Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining today. Some of the things that I've noticed as I've been on a journey just reading more material in the Christian faith, whether it's Protestant, Eastern Orthodox, or Catholic, and especially in the Protestant tradition, I guess because that's where more I would fall in, and the different views there. And it's like, how do we all come to these varying beliefs and convictions and teachings? And one thing that's completely inescapable, our theology is shaped by more than just the Bible. um, I think everyone likes to hold on to, I follow Jesus, I'm faithful to the scriptures. Nothing else is, the Bible, Jesus, God is my allegiance, and there's nothing else shaping me. I'm just trying to follow the text as it's written, as scriptures as it's written. And I think to some degree that they're being honest, but in another instance, I think we're not being honest in saying that there are other things shaping us. Um, and sometimes we give little credence to, cultural influences, especially with things listed in New Testament that make 21st century people feel a little awkward. Um, but we are shaped by more than that, and what I want to do on this channel is bring more about how we're shaped by other things, and I think that will allow us to be more discerning of what other things that we're shaped by, as well as more intentional of what we allow that shapes us to shape us. But one quote that I wanted to read by a sociologist. Now he's specifically talking about evangelicalism, but I think this could be true for really any type of belief. He says, evangelicalism isn't a religion of the Bible. More accurate to say it's a tradition of whose self-identity is we get our theology from the Bible, while purposely forgetting they got their theology like everyone else does: culture, experience, material situation, and group conflict. And that specifically, that was Samuel Perry, by the way. And I think he was talking about some other things there, but there's something in that tweet that really reminded me, this first to the culture and experience, that those things shape how we understand the scriptures, principles we extract from the scriptures, precepts that we see in the scriptures. It's all shaped by that. And I think last year, 2020, for me, I really got to see that. There was a lot of political energy and division and conversations from many church leaders in a way that made it clear that there's something else motivating you. Even though you're saying, I'm going back to the scriptures, I'm being faithful to God, there are other things there. And I think if people just be honest and say, hey, these are things that are shaping me, it makes it less shocking for people. Although some people already know. They're like, hey, I already know about this evangelicalism and the religious right and 1980s, and even before then, just the merger of conservatism and white evangelical specifically. But for those of us who didn't know that particular history and all the details, and even then, I think sometimes each individual is being shaped by the person that's bringing them into the faith, and it makes it a little messy. Is it just me receiving this? Is it me knowing what I'm receiving and going with it, even though I know this doesn't line up with what the scriptures actually say? But we are shaped by our experiences, right? We are shaped by how we understand the world. Like I said, last year was a big eye-opener for me. Like, wow, these people, like, no one sees that that we're off a little bit. One one guy, one prophetic voice was stating that he said we need to devote biblical values. And he listed some things. I think there were three things. Um, one of them was like traditional marriage, something else. And like I think the first two that he said, I was like, okay. But the third one was like, there's clearly something else motivating you, man. Like that you don't, that's not the language I would use for, as I'm looking at scripture, which was religious liberty. And I'm like, religious liberty from the scriptures, like, definitely not necessarily the Old Testament. I mean, you don't want to be worshiping any other God other than Yahweh. In New Testament, I don't see it either. Like, I feel like underneath that, what you really mean is Christians, right? Because religious liberty only means Christians, because we only have Christians in this nation. We only have followers of Jesus in this nation. And it's like, yo, there's something else there. That sounds very conservative language, political language, that, and even if you are, like, that's fine. I don't care about that. But when you're using that language to communicate something about why we should vote for this person or vote for that person or vote for this party, vote for that party, it's very confusing. It's very mixing. And I think if you just say, hey, I lean this way and this is what I think because of XYZ. But now when we're going back to the text as proof text for who we should vote for, it gets really, really messy, because obviously no side has a monopoly on good. And I think if we're honest, the more complex the society is, the more complex our issues on how we resolve our issues will be. And that's what's happening. I think that's what's happening. I think it's very complex. Some things are very clear and some things aren't. They're pros and cons, meaning if we clearly tell people if we're going to, the way that we're going to fund this particular thing means this thing, then that should be something that's explained clearly and not just promoting the thing that's good and not negating the ramifications of this decision, but talking about it all, just putting it all on the table so people understand, and not so that people are kind of duped into thinking one thing and not really understanding that, certain things have to happen. We have limited resources. There's not unlimited amount of anything. So there, things have to be arranged, allocated in a certain way. But it also reminds me of, I was listening to this pastor, he's kind of in the Anabaptist tradition, but I think he was talking about John Wesley, I believe, about how everyone tries to come to the Bible in a way that we're acknowledging what's happening when we each come, when we gather and read the scriptures and try to understand the scriptures and live out the scriptures. And I think one of the things he said was BERT, which was Bible, experience, reason, and tradition. That all of these things should be filters, or are filters, as we approach the text. Right? We look at the Bible, okay, as it says what it says, and then we look at our experiences. Do our experiences line up with the scriptures? Right? So that, like, for example, we talk about healing. If we see Jesus healing, or if we see the verse that says, call the elders, lay their hand on the sick, and they shall recover, or things of that nature. Some people experience healing, some people don't experience, some people see healing, some people don't. So that's a filter. That's a tension that someone has to deal with in their reasoning. Okay, is healing reasonable? Is that something is that rational? Is that something that I should expect, using my mind and how I understand the world, the different disciplines we have. Is this something that's reasonable, that's rational, right? And then the tradition that I hear, which I think is usually is one of the most influential aspects of how we live out the scriptures, which is which usually comes from either the people that introduced us to the faith, um, if you didn't grow up in a household that was Christian, or um, was explicit living in a way that would help you identify that Jesus is Lord and things like that. Um, I think that is huge. And sometimes when you have to go back and look at, you know, where you got your ideas from and how you understand history like that's very tricky, because a lot of the times those people, that group, got you to where you are, and there's benefits there. And so now going back and critiquing that group in certain aspects can be challenging, because it's like, well, I got this good part. Can I acknowledge the good and then reject and criticize the things that weren't so good? And how do I do that in a way that's honest, yet acknowledges what I received from that? I think those are all the things that really shape us in understanding how we live out the scriptures. And I think if we were just honest about, okay, it's the Bible, but it's also my experience. What am I experiencing? Am I experiencing, like I said, healing? Am I experiencing prophecy or anything like that? What am I experiencing that's also a filter in how I live out the scriptures? Because there's people saying they're experiencing things that I don't experience, but that doesn't mean I necessarily should reject it, right? There are other things. Got, again, rational reason, and then tradition. What tradition that I inherit as I'm walking and living out my faith? So again, this was just to talk about, again, our theology is shaped more than just the Bible. We just think it's, man, I'm on it, and it's like, no, there are other things shaping us, and it's okay. I don't think we can avoid that. We can't avoid the cultural influences that we have and how we see things. We can try to be aware of them, but getting rid of them is almost like getting rid of yourself. Because again, I think there's some type of relationship between we creating culture and culture creating us. Our habits, our values, our ideas, and sometimes you won't know for years that that the thing that you may be holding strong onto is something that was created generations ago. So yeah, let me know what you think. Are there theologies that you know that are shaped by other things and people were not willing to admit them? What were those things? And share any of your stories as well. I definitely appreciate it and look forward to reading them. Thanks.